Hey everyone, tonight we're diving deep into a world most of us thankfully never have to face, what it was really like to be sick before modern medicine. No antibiotics, no hospitals, just ancient remedies, mysterious rituals, and the constant fear of the unknown. So before you settle in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy these explorations. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. It's incredible to connect with you all across the globe. Now, dim your lights, maybe turn on a gentle fan for that soft background hum, and let's slowly drift into this story together. The woman who slept in the straw hoping fever would pass. Imagine yourself entering a small, dimly lit cottage, where the walls are thick with the scent of damp earth and worn wood. The faint crackle of a dying fire mingles with the lingering smell of straw spread thinly across the cold floor. In the corner, a woman lies beneath a rough blanket, her breath slow and uneven, the quiet rhythm of her chest rising and falling filling the stillness of the room. She rests on a bed made not of fine linens, but of straw gathered from the fields, a humble mattress for a humble life. The air hangs heavy, thick with the scent of damp straw, faintly sweet but earthy, a reminder of the life lived close to the soil. Outside, the distant tolling of church bells drifts softly through the narrow window, marking the passing hours, yet offering no certainty about what the day may bring. In this time, the woman has no access to physicians or elaborate remedies. There are no soothing medicines, no carefully prepared poultices, only the patient hope that rest itself might coax her fever away. The slow passage of time, measured by the faint chimes and the flickering shadows on the walls, becomes her companion in this quiet struggle. Imagine the sensation of the straw beneath her, a coarse, uneven surface that offers little comfort but serves as the closest thing to a bed she can find. The roughness presses gently against her skin, grounding her to the earth even as her body battles unseen forces. Outside, the soft rustle of the wind through bare branches adds to the hush, a reminder of the larger world moving steadily onward. Her family moves quietly around her, careful not to disturb the fragile rest that may bring relief. A child tiptoes past, eyes wide with silent worry. A nearby candle flickers weakly, casting long, wavering shadows that dance on the walls, as if reflecting the uncertainty that fills the room. In these moments, illness is both a private and communal experience. The fever isolates her within her own body, yet the whole household feels its weight, watching, waiting, hoping. The rhythms of daily life slow to accommodate this pause, the usual sounds dimmed by the gravity of sickness. The absence of medicine or doctors underscores a world where survival often depended on endurance and quiet faith. The woman's hope rests not on cure but on the slow, steady passage of time, the hope that the fever will pass, carried away by the turning of hours and the healing powers of rest. Imagine the contrast between the fragility within the cottage and the steady constancy beyond, the fields lying fallow or green, the sun rising and setting without regard for human suffering, the church bells continuing their tireless marking of time. Life unfolds both inside and outside these humble walls, linked by unseen threads of hope and resilience. As evening descends, the flickering candlelight softens further, and the woman's breath deepens into a steadier, calmer rhythm. The room settles into quiet, punctuated only by the faint ticking of time and the gentle cadence of her breathing, a lullaby of survival in a world without certainty. So, imagine yourself once more in that dim cottage, the scent of damp straw and whispered prayers filling the air, feeling the slow unfolding of a moment where hope is held in the simple act of rest. The woman who slept in the straw hoping fever would pass embodies a quiet endurance, a testament to the fragile strength of life in the face of uncertainty. The family who watched as leeches were applied at dawn. Imagine yourself stepping quietly into a dim chamber at dawn, where the first pale light filters softly through narrow windows. The air is still, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and aged wood, mingling with the subtle, metallic tang of glass jars lined neatly on a worn table. Inside each jar rides a cluster of leeches, small, dark creatures, patient and silent, awaiting their call to action. In this hushed space, the family gathers close, their faces etched with quiet concern and resigned hope. The healer, a figure both respected and familiar, moves with practiced calm, selecting leeches carefully and arranging them upon the patient's bared arm. The creatures press gently against skin, their suction beginning a slow, almost imperceptible ritual believed to draw out corrupted humors, the unseen poisons thought to cause illness and imbalance within the body. The family watches in stillness, the rhythm of their breathing steady but tense. The quiet is punctuated only by the faintest sounds, the soft rustle of cloth, the occasional murmur of reassurance, the subtle pulse of life mingling with the steady drip of blood from each leech. It is a scene heavy with a kind of helplessness, thick as the morning fog outside the window, where the promise of healing is shadowed by the fragility of the human body. Daily life around such treatments was marked by these solemn moments, where science and superstition entwined. Imagine the patient lying still, their skin growing pale as the leeches worked, while family members waited, counting time in hushed intervals, hoping each drop of blood would carry away the ailment. Yet often, the ritual left behind not relief but exhaustion, a drained strength that whispered of the body's vulnerability rather than its recovery. The biography of such a family's ordeal often unfolded over days or weeks. Illness might have crept slowly, unnoticed at first, then with increasing weight that called the healer's intervention. The leeching was but one stage in a cycle of care, herbs brewed and administered, prayers whispered, diets altered, all interwoven with the daily rhythms of labor, rest, and waiting. The house itself, thick with the scent of medicinal herbs and fading candle wax, became a sanctuary and a place of quiet dread. Archaeological traces of these practices emerge in unexpected ways. Glass vessels, often delicate and carefully preserved, appear alongside medical tools and written remedies in historical layers. Writings from various periods describe the preparation and use of leeches, reflecting a belief system that saw illness as an imbalance to be corrected by removing the body's excess or tainted fluids. Cultural memory holds this practice in both reverence and regret. Stories passed down recount the leech's role in healing and harm alike. The delicate balance between remedy and depletion. These narratives speak to the patience required of families, the thin line between hope and despair, and the enduring human desire to wrest control from the unseen forces of disease. Within the family, experiences varied. Some found solace in the ritual, trusting the healer's skill and the tradition that guided each movement. Others felt only the slow ebbing of strength, the quiet fading of vitality beneath the leech's grasp. The witnessing of this process was itself a trial, a lesson in endurance, love, and the limits of human agency. Imagine once more the morning light shifting softly across that chamber, the leeches still at work, the patient resting quietly, and the family holding close the fragile thread of hope. This ritual, simple yet profound, reveals a world where healing was as much about presence and faith as it was about medicine, where to watch was to feel both the weight of helplessness and the gentle pulse of care that binds us through times of suffering. The village that trusted herbs hung over every threshold. Imagine yourself walking along a narrow village lane, where weathered cottages lean close together beneath a soft, gray sky. The scent of earth and wood smoke drifts through the air, mingling with something more subtle, faint whispers of dried herbs hanging in bundles above every doorway. These garlands, brittle to the touch and muted in color, sway gently with the breeze, a quiet presence woven into the fabric of daily life. In this village, the custom of hanging herbs above thresholds was more than simple decoration. It was an ancient ritual, a practice born of hope and necessity. Imagine generations before, when sickness could sweep through a community with little warning, leaving fear and loss in its wake. Without doctors or medicine as we know it, people turned to the gifts of the earth, seeking protection in the familiar scent and sight of herbs like lavender, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Each bundle was carefully chosen, dried slowly in dark, airy spaces until its fragrance grew strong and lasting. Imagine hands weathered by work, weaving stalks and leaves into garlands with practiced care, knowing that their scent carried more than fragrance, it carried the promise of safety. The belief was that the aroma could purify the air, driving away the invisible threats that brought illness. Imagine villagers stepping cautiously past one another, their coughs muffled behind shuttered windows, yet drawing quiet reassurance from the herbs that hung above their doors. The scent was a shield, a comfort, a silent guardian standing watch over the home. Even as sickness deepened within the walls, the bundles remained steadfast. They did not cure the ill nor halt the spread of disease, but their presence offered a gentle reassurance in uncertain times. Imagine a mother arranging a bundle over her door, her fingers lingering on the rough twine, her heart lifted slightly by tradition's embrace. The herbs connected the village to the cycles of nature and the wisdom passed down through ages. Imagine the rhythms of planting, harvesting, drying, and tying, each step marked by a deep understanding of the land's gifts and limits. The practice tied people to their environment, blending practical knowledge with spiritual hope. Historical records and folklore across many cultures reveal similar customs. Herbs used as talismans, purifiers, and symbols of protection. Imagine this village as part of a wider tapestry of human experience, where scent and ritual mingled to face the unknown. The visual of dried herbs hanging quietly in doorways also marked social and seasonal rhythms. Imagine festivals when fresh herbs were gathered and bundles renewed, the air filling with new scents that promised renewal and health. These moments punctuated the passing year, offering rhythm and meaning even amid hardship. Yet, this trust in herbs was not blind. Villagers understood their limitations. The herbs did not replace care, prayer, or community support. Imagine neighbors bringing food to the sick, sharing warmth and kindness alongside their reliance on tradition. The garlands were part of a larger web of hope and resilience. The persistent presence of these herbs, even in the face of illness, reflects a subtle balance between acceptance and resistance, a way to cope with fragility by embracing familiar rituals. Imagine the quiet strength drawn from these simple acts, the soft layering of scent and memory that eased minds burdened by uncertainty. As you let this image settle, picture the village lane once more, the muted colors of dried leaves, the gentle sway of garlands against timber walls, the faint, calming aroma carried on the breeze. The story of these herbs reminds us of humanity's enduring search for protection and comfort in the unseen, and the ways small rituals shape our connection to the world around us. The man who sipped bitter tisanes in search of relief. Imagine a small, dimly lit chamber, where the early morning light filters softly through a narrow window. The air is thick with the scent of earth and dried herbs, mingling in a quiet ritual that unfolds day by day. In the center, a simple wooden table bears a modest cup, dark and steaming, filled with a brew steeped from bark and root. The liquid is deep in color, almost black, and its surface ripples gently with each careful lift. The man who holds this cup knows the taste well, sharp and biting, with an almost metallic edge that lingers on the tongue long after the sip has passed. It is a flavor born of necessity, not pleasure, a remedy crafted from the natural world's offerings in the absence of more certain cures. Each sip carries with it a quiet hope, a fragile wish that this time, perhaps, the bitter infusion might ease the persistent ache gnawing within his body. The pain, dull but relentless, shadows his waking hours and follows him into restless nights. Yet with every morning and every cup, the relief proves fleeting, the promise of comfort dissolving like mist in the rising sun. Imagine the rhythm of these moments, the careful preparation of the tisane, the slow boiling of water over a modest flame, the measured handfuls of bark and root dropped into the pot. The scent rises, earthy and austere, filling the small space with the tangible essence of nature's healing, an ancient language spoken through plants and time. This ritual of sipping is both a physical and a mental balm. The man clings to it as one might a slender thread in a vast, tangled web of discomfort and uncertainty. The act itself is a small ceremony, a moment of quiet control amidst the unpredictable tides of illness and weakness. Yet, when dawn comes and the ache remains unchanged, the cup is set aside with silent resignation. The steam dissipates slowly, leaving behind only the bitter residue of what might have been. The room falls back into its muted stillness, and the man prepares himself to face another day marked by the same persistent struggle. Historically, such tisanes were common in households lacking access to physicians or costly remedies. Herbal knowledge was passed from generation to generation, a blend of folklore and observation, trial and error. Bark from willow trees, roots from valerian or gentian, and other bitter botanicals were believed to soothe pain, reduce fevers, or calm unrest. The efficacy was variable, but the hope they inspired was enduring. The man's story, though quiet and unassuming, is one shared by countless souls throughout history. It is a narrative of resilience in the face of uncertainty, of small acts of care woven into the fabric of daily life. It is the simple humanity of seeking relief wherever it might be found, even in the harsh bitterness of a humble cup. As you imagine the steam curling upward, the gentle clink of the cup against wood, and the subtle tension in a hand weary yet determined, consider the delicate balance between hope and acceptance. This is not a tale of sudden cures or dramatic triumphs, but of enduring patience and the gentle persistence of the human spirit. And so, as the morning light grows stronger and the world stirs beyond the narrow window, the man sits quietly, the bitter tisane cooling in his grasp, a silent testament to the long, slow journey of seeking comfort amid pain. The children who waited while prayers were whispered, imagine yourself stepping quietly into a small chamber, its heavy wooden door barely creaking as it closes behind you. The air is thick with the soft haze of candle smoke, curling lazily upward, mingling with the faint scent of damp stone and worn fabric. A single flickering flame casts gentle shadows across the walls, dappling the space in muted gold and deep gray. In the center of this room lies a small figure, swathed in coarse linens, still except for the slight, uneven rise and fall of their chest. Around the bed, a handful of children sit on worn stools, their eyes wide and still, fixed on the quiet ritual unfolding before them. Their faces are pale but drawn with the patience of those who have waited many hours, perhaps many days. At the head of the bed stands a priest, his robes rustling softly as he moves. His voice is low and measured, the cadence of his whispered prayers weaving through the room like a gentle breeze. Each word is deliberate, a steady murmur that seems to pulse with the rhythm of hope and reverence. The children listen, holding their breath, as if the very act of speaking might mend what the weary herbs and bitter medicines have failed to heal. This was a common scene in medieval homes touched by illness, where remedies blended the practical with the spiritual. In a time before modern medicine, faith and ritual provided a vital comfort, a quiet resistance against the fragile hold on life that so many endured. Imagine the world outside this dimly lit room. The village moves slowly beneath a heavy sky, the murmur of everyday tasks mingling with the distant bleat of sheep and the creak of wooden carts. The rhythm of daily life continued, even as this small family waited, suspended in a fragile moment between hope and loss. Children in medieval times were no strangers to such quiet vigils. Disease was a constant companion, and death often visited homes without warning. Yet, within these moments of stillness, there was a profound resilience, a shared endurance that held families together. The priest's prayers were more than words, they were a bridge, a connection between the mortal world and something beyond, something unseen yet deeply felt. The whispered chants echoed ancient beliefs, passed down through generations, carrying with them the weight of history and tradition. The candle's smoke thickened, tracing delicate patterns in the air, catching the faintest light. The children's eyes, reflecting the flicker, revealed a blend of fear and hope, the kind that forms quietly in the spaces between waking and sleep. They did not speak, for speaking might break the fragile calm, might shatter the spell cast by these sacred words. Outside, the smell of damp earth seeped through the cracks of the stone walls, mingling with the faint scent of crushed herbs and burning tallow. The sounds of the village softened as twilight deepened, footsteps fading, doors closing, the lullaby of the wind through bare branches. The scene was a pause in time, a quiet testament to the human desire for healing, for mercy, for something just beyond reach. As you imagine yourself sitting among these children, waiting with bated breath, consider the contrast between then and now. Modern hospitals hum with machines and bright lights, yet here, in the medieval home, healing was a ritual of patience, faith, and quiet endurance. The prayers were a comfort when medicine was limited, a way to hold on to hope when so much was uncertain. In these whispered moments, the rhythm of life and death intertwined softly. The children waited, The priest prayed, and outside the world moved on, relentless, unyielding as it always does. Yet, for those few inside that room, time stretched and folded, caught in the fragile balance between what was and what might yet be. The noble who summoned a barber to bleed him before dawn. Imagine yourself entering a grand chamber softly lit by the pale light of a rising dawn. The heavy curtains are drawn back just enough to allow a cool, gray light to filter through tall windows, casting long, delicate shadows across rich tapestries and polished wood. In the center of the room, a nobleman sits wrapped in a thick mantle, his posture calm but expectant. The air carries the faint scent of lavender and beeswax mingled with the chill of early morning. Nearby, a barber prepares his instruments with quiet precision, a polished basin, sharp lancets, and neatly folded cloths. The chamber is hushed, filled only with the subtle sounds of measured breathing and the soft clink of tools being arranged. This was a ritual repeated often and without question, a practice rooted more in tradition than in scientific understanding. The nobleman, like many of his class, believed that the letting of blood could restore balance within his body, drive out sickness, and renew vigor. Though the reasons were uncertain, the ritual held its place in the rhythms of daily life. Imagine the moment as the barber approaches, the nobleman extending his arm with practiced ease. The sharp blade is drawn swiftly, a brief sting followed by the warm flow of blood collected carefully in a shallow basin. The slow trickle echoes faintly in the stillness, a soft, steady sound that marks time itself. Around them, the chamber remains quiet but charged with an unspoken reverence for the ritual. The nobleman's gaze is steady, perhaps distant, as if crossing the boundary between the physical and the unseen forces believed to govern health. The barber works efficiently, his hands sure despite the delicacy of the task. Outside the chamber, the world stirs. Servants begin their morning duties, distant church bells ring softly, and the village slowly awakens. Yet here, in this intimate space, time seems to pause, centered on the ritual that has been practiced for generations. This act of bloodletting, though now understood as misguided, once held great significance. It was thought to release harmful humors believed to cause disease, a physical purging of imbalance. Imagine the confidence and trust placed in such rituals, woven deeply into the fabric of noble life, influencing decisions and daily routines alike. As the last drops fall, the barber applies a cloth with gentle pressure, and the nobleman allows himself a moment of quiet reflection. The mantle is wrapped more closely, a small comfort against the chill, and the chamber's silence returns, interrupted only by the distant sounds of a waking world. The ritual concludes not with fanfare, but with a steady return to the rhythms of life. Meals prepared, letters read, duties undertaken. The nobleman rises, carrying with him the ancient hope that this simple act will bring renewed strength. Imagine the texture of the moment, the cold metal of instruments, the smooth fabric of the mantle, the warmth of blood flowing beneath skin, a convergence of senses that bind body and belief. The noble who summoned a barber before dawn embraced not only a medical practice but a symbol of care, tradition, and the search for balance in a world both fragile and complex. So, picture yourself once again in that quiet chamber, feeling the cool light of dawn and hearing the gentle trickle that marks an age-old ritual. In the stillness lies a story not just of blood and blade, but of humanity's enduring hope to heal through the acts we inherit and repeat. The healer who searched the garden by lantern light. Imagine yourself stepping softly into a garden cloaked in the quiet hush of night, where frost blankets every leaf with a delicate silver sheen. The air is crisp, carrying the subtle scent of earth and damp foliage, while a single lantern casts a warm, flickering glow that dances among the shadows. Here moves a healer, her footsteps careful and deliberate, threading through beds of herbs that have long been trusted as allies in the battle against pain and illness. Each plant she gathers carries a story whispered through generations, sage for clarity, lavender for calm, mint for renewal. The healer's fingers brush gently over leaves and stems, selecting those she believes hold the power to soothe and mend. Imagine the texture of the foliage beneath her touch, soft, fragile, yet imbued with a quiet resilience. With every harvest, she carries not only the weight of plants but the heavy hope of relief for those she tends. The rhythm of her work is slow and measured, interrupted only by the soft crackle of frost beneath her steps or the occasional distant hoot of an owl. As dawn approaches, the lantern's light fades into the growing pale of morning, revealing hands stained green with the life she has gathered and a mind shadowed by the uncertainty of her craft. Despite the care and knowledge, doubt lingers. Will these humble leaves ease the pain, or merely delay the inevitable? Daily life for such a healer was woven tightly with the cycles of nature and the rhythms of human need. Imagine long hours spent studying the plant's forms, listening to whispered lore, and preparing poultices or teas by the flickering light of hearth fires. The garden was both a refuge and a source of endless labor, a place where tradition and trial met beneath the stars. The biography of a healer's journey often reflected a blend of skill and perseverance. She might rise before dawn to tend the plants, collect roots and blossoms, and carry her remedies from house to house. Her knowledge was both practical and mystical, a legacy passed down through stories, songs, and careful observation. Each healing was a dialogue with nature, a delicate negotiation between the seen and unseen forces that shape health and suffering. Archaeological finds reveal the importance of such gardens in historical communities. Remnants of herb beds, seeds, and simple tools provide tangible traces of these caretakers' work. Manuscripts and herbals detail the uses and properties of plants, echoing the healer's nightly search and the enduring quest to understand nature's remedies. Cultural traditions celebrate these figures as both wise and humble. Folk tales recount their tireless dedication and the respect they earned, even as they faced skepticism or hardship. These stories capture the delicate balance between hope and doubt that define their lives, the ever-present question of whether nature's gifts would be enough. Within the healer's family and community, experiences varied. Some relied heavily on her knowledge, finding comfort in her remedies and counsel. Others regarded her with wariness, uncertain of the unseen forces at play. Yet all shared a profound recognition of the healer's role, as a bridge between earth and human, between pain and relief, between despair and the fragile promise of healing. Imagine once more the healer moving through the frost-kissed garden as dawn's first light begins to lift the shadows. Her hands, stained and steady, hold the fragile bounty of the night's labor. Her heart carries both hope and doubt, entwined as inseparably as the roots beneath her feet. This quiet ritual, simple yet profound, reveals a world where healing was a patient art, one that embraced uncertainty while seeking comfort in the gentle leaves of the earth. The family who wove charms into their bed curtains, imagine yourself stepping into a modest room, softly lit by the flicker of a single oil lamp. The walls are bare but for the worn wooden beams, and the air carries the faint scent of beeswax and fabric. At the center stands a simple bed, its curtains drawn tightly around the sleeping space. These curtains, though faded with age, hold a secret, a delicate weaving of protection and hope. Within the folds of the cloth are pale scraps of parchment, carefully sewn into the fabric seams. Each scrap bears hand-inscribed verses, words thought to carry power against the unseen forces that threatened health and life. Imagine the steady hand of a family member threading needle and parchment alike, stitching these charms into the curtains with care and quiet determination. The family who made these curtains lived in a time when illness was a shadow that could linger long and deep. With limited remedies and scarce knowledge of medicine, they turned to these protective verses as a final line of defense. The charms were more than ink on paper. They were a tangible expression of hope, a silent plea woven into the very fabric that surrounded the sick. As the illness lingered, the curtains were drawn tight. Imagine the soft rustle of cloth, the muted sounds of whispered prayers, and the gentle glow of lamplight casting dancing shadows on the walls. The room became a small sanctuary where the family sought to keep death at bay, wrapping their fears and hopes in layers of fabric and words. The verses sewn into the curtains often combined religious scripture with folk wisdom, blending spiritual protection with ancestral tradition. Imagine lines carefully copied by trembling hands, their meaning deeply felt though their power invisible. These scraps became both shield and talisman, offering comfort amid uncertainty. Historical accounts reveal that such practices were widespread in many regions and periods. Families embroidered, painted, or stitched protective symbols and prayers into household textiles, curtains, clothing, quilts, each serving as a quiet guardian against misfortune. Imagine the shared understanding that these charms held a place in the intimate spaces where life's fragility was most visible. The act of creating and maintaining these charms was itself a ritual of care and connection. Imagine the slow hours spent gathering parchment and ink, the whispered conversations about which verses to use, the passing of knowledge from elder to younger generations. Through these acts, families asserted agency in the face of helplessness. Yet, the presence of these charms also speaks to the loneliness and desperation that illness could bring. Imagine the small room's glow contrasting with the broader world outside, a world unaware or indifferent to the family's private battle. The curtains formed a boundary, both physical and symbolic, between life and death, hope and fear. This tradition of weaving charms into bed curtains reflects a universal human impulse to seek protection where science could not yet reach, to give form to intangible hopes, and to create rituals that offer solace. Imagine how many such curtains, long since faded or lost, carried the silent prayers of countless families. As you reflect on this, picture once again the dimly lit room, the soft folds of fabric, and the tiny parchments nestled within. The story of these curtains is a testament to resilience, to the quiet ways people have faced mortality with courage, love, and faith. The child who drank water infused with ashes. Imagine yourself in a modest household, where the wooden beams above carry the faint scent of smoke from the hearth, and the air feels thick with the warmth of close bodies and whispered prayers. Outside, the narrow street is quiet at this hour, the cobblestones slick with morning dew, the distant call of a rooster cutting through the stillness. Inside, a small child lies pale and restless, fever flickering behind half-closed eyes. The family gathers near the bedside, their faces etched with worry and hope. In the corner, a simple clay bowl rests on a rough-hewn table, its contents a murky mixture of water and ashes not from any ordinary fire, but from the burnt remains of sacred texts. The taste of these ashes is acrid and sharp, a harsh contrast to the usual sweetness of honey or the gentle bitterness of herbal infusions. Yet for this family, steeped in tradition and faith, the bitter liquid holds a promise. In medieval times, the world of medicine was a delicate blend of observation, superstition, and spiritual belief. The boundaries between physical healing and divine intervention were fluid. Sacred texts, Bibles, prayer books, or other religious manuscripts were believed to carry a kind of power even in their remnants. The ashes of such texts, mixed into water, were thought to contain a curative essence, a way to transfer divine blessing and protection directly to the sick. Picture the mother holding the cup steadily, her hand warm despite the cool room. The child, weak but willing, sips the strange liquid. The acrid taste lingers on the tongue, a reminder of the remedy's unnatural nature. Around them, the family watches silently, eyes flicking between the child's face and the emptying cup, measuring hope against reason in a careful, cautious dance. This practice was part of a larger tapestry of medieval healing, where faith and practicality intertwined. Illness, especially in children, was a constant threat, with fevers and infections often progressing unchecked. The absence of effective pharmaceuticals meant families turned to remedies that combined physical ingredients with symbolic meaning, trusting that the sacred could influence the body's fragile balance. The use of ashes from holy texts was not widespread everywhere but appeared in records and folk practices across regions, reflecting a common human desire to grasp at any lifeline in moments of vulnerability. The ritual of burning a treasured book and using its remnants as medicine speaks to a profound belief in transformation, the sacred becoming tangible even in ash. Imagine, too, the textures and sounds that accompanied this ritual, the crackle of burning pages in the hearth, the fine powder settling softly onto rough cloth, the careful stirring of ashes into water until the mixture clouded with dark particles. Each step was laden with intention and reverence, a small act of hope against the unpredictable forces of illness. While the taste was bitter and the effects uncertain, the act itself offered a form of comfort, not just to the child but to the entire family. It was a gesture of agency in a world often governed by chance and misfortune, a way to assert control through faith and custom. Yet, as the hours pass and dawn's light gradually fills the room, the child's fever may persist or wane, leaving the family suspended between relief and lingering fear. Such moments were common in medieval homes, where the rhythms of daily life were punctuated by the quiet dramas of sickness and healing. Historical accounts remind us that these practices were part of a complex relationship between medicine, religion, and community. Priests might bless the ashes before use. Herbalists might advise on dosage. Neighbors might share stories of cures and losses. The boundaries between science and spirituality were blurred, reflecting a world where physical and metaphysical health were deeply entwined. As you imagine the slow unfolding of this scene, the dim light shifting softly, the faint scent of smoke and damp wood, the whispered prayers mingling with the child's labored breath, consider the layers of meaning in that simple cup. It is a symbol of hope, faith, and the persistent human search for healing in the face of uncertainty. And so, as the child drinks the water infused with ashes, the family watches quietly, caught between the steady pull of belief and the harsh realities of their time. It is a delicate balance, one shaped by love, fear, and the enduring hope that within the bitter taste lies a chance for relief. The man who could not afford any remedy at all. Imagine yourself stepping into a modest room in a small medieval village, where the flicker of a dying fire casts faint shadows across rough-hewn wooden walls. The air is cool, carrying the faint, steady scent of smoke mingled with the earthy aroma of straw and worn cloth. Near the cold hearth lies a simple straw pallet, threadbare and flattened from use. On it, a man rests alone, his body still, untouched by healers' hands or the ministrations of herbs. There is no murmur of voices here, no whispered prayers or hurried footsteps. The room is silent but for the occasional creak of the old beams settling and the soft rattle of wind against shuttered windows. This silence holds a weight, an absence that speaks louder than words. In medieval society, access to care was far from guaranteed. Wealth and status often determined whether a person might receive remedies or consolation. For some, like this man, medicine was a luxury beyond reach. The only remedy was time, the slow passage of hours marked by fading warmth and the dimming of life's fragile spark. Imagine the rhythm of his days leading to this moment. A life bound by toil and struggle, measured by the seasons and the turning of crops, by the rise and fall of fortunes that rarely favored the poorest. When illness came, as it often did, it was an unwelcome visitor with no respect for hope or circumstance. Outside this quiet chamber, the village carried on. The distant murmur of a market closing, the shuffle of feet on cobblestones, the faint call of a shepherd tending flocks. Life's ordinary sounds pressed gently against the walls, indifferent to the stillness inside. The man's plight was not unique. Across medieval Europe, countless souls faced sickness without succor. While monasteries and apothecaries offered healing to those who could pay or belonged to certain ranks, many others endured their ailments in solitude. No salves, no poultices, no soothing teas, just the cold truth of survival and the inevitable flow of time. The sparse furnishings in the room tell a quiet story. A wooden stool, cracked and worn, stands unused. A coarse blanket lies folded, its fabric rough but once providing comfort. The hearth, once lively with warmth and light, now smolders faintly, its embers fading toward darkness. Outside, the wind carries whispers of a coming winter, a season that promised hardship and long nights. For the poor, it was a constant struggle, not only against illness but against hunger, cold, and the fragile balance of daily existence. Imagine yourself in this space, feeling the chill that seeps through gaps in the wooden planks, hearing the silence that fills the void left by absence of care. The world beyond may be bustling and vibrant, but here, time seems to stretch and slow, each breath weighted by uncertainty. Yet within this quiet despair, there was a form of resilience. The man's presence, even in stillness, bore witness to a life shaped by endurance. Though no healer knelt beside him and no prayers were uttered, his story was part of a larger tapestry of medieval survival, a testament to the human spirit's quiet tenacity. Medicine in the Middle Ages was a blend of knowledge, tradition, and faith. Those with means might seek out remedies brewed from roots and flowers, or consult physicians who studied ancient texts. But for many, especially peasants and laborers, such care was out of reach, and the course of illness was left to fate. The cold hearth and straw pallet were the final surroundings for many, where illness met the limits of human comfort. It was a space both intimate and stark, where the boundaries between life and death blurred softly, without spectacle or drama. Imagine the slow fading of light in this room, the gentle closing of a day that might also close a life. Outside, the village moves toward night, the sounds dimming, the stars emerging quietly above. In reflecting on this scene, we see the contrast between the care available to the wealthy and the quiet suffering of those without. It reminds us that history is not only the story of grand events and great achievements, but also the everyday realities faced by countless unnamed individuals. The man who could not afford any remedy at all embodies a truth of the medieval world, a constant struggle to live within the bounds of circumstance, where time was both enemy and healer, where silence spoke volumes, and where the endurance of the human spirit was as much a part of history as any battle or king. The midwife who sat vigil beside a wheezing child. Imagine yourself entering a modest cottage on the edge of a village, where the muted glow of a single candle casts soft, wavering shadows across wooden walls weathered by years of damp and cold. The air inside is thick with the delicate fragrance of steaming herbs, sage, thyme, and perhaps a hint of lavender, stirred gently by the faint draft slipping beneath the door. This scent, both soothing and earthy, fills the space with a quiet promise of comfort, even amid uncertainty. In one corner of the room, a woman sits beside a small, fragile child, whose chest rises and falls in a slow, uneven rhythm. The child's breath is punctuated by faint wheezes, subtle yet persistent sounds that ripple through the stillness of the night. The midwife, a figure marked by years of quiet labor and careful observation, rests her hand lightly on the child's back, feeling the delicate cadence of each breath, counting them with patient vigilance. This vigil stretches into the longest night, a stretch of hours measured not by clocks but by the gentle descent of a candle's flame, melting wax slowly pooling in its holder. Each moment drifts past with an almost hypnotic calm, the midwife's steady presence a balm to the fragile life she guards. Her eyes, though weary, remain alert, reflecting an intimate understanding of the delicate balance between life and loss. Imagine the rough texture of the wooden floor beneath her knees, the worn fabric of her cloak absorbing the cool night air. Nearby, the bowl of steaming herbs sends gentle spirals of vapor curling toward the ceiling, mingling with the warmth from the hearth that glows softly in the background. The ambient noises of the village, the distant barking of dogs, the occasional hoot of an owl, fade into the backdrop, leaving the room cocooned in a quiet world suspended between hope and fear. The role of the midwife in these times extended far beyond the act of childbirth. She was a keeper of knowledge, a healer who relied on centuries-old traditions and an intuitive understanding of the human body and spirit. Medical science as we know it was distant and limited. Remedies were often drawn from nature and observation, woven together with faith and experience. The steaming herbs beside her are emblematic of this blend. Natural scents meant to soothe the air and possibly ease the child's breathing. In a world where disease could spread swiftly and silently, the presence of a midwife meant more than care. It meant the fragile thread between survival and despair. The child's wheezing, perhaps a symptom of an illness like croup or pneumonia, was a warning whispered through fragile lungs. Without the comforts of modern medicine, every breath counted, every moment stretched into a vigilant watchfulness. Imagine the rhythm of the midwife's vigil, a soft touch on the child's back, the whispered prayers murmured beneath her breath, the faint shifting of the candle's flame. The long hours offer no certainty, only the patient waiting and the hope that rest and the gentle warmth of herbs might ease the child's suffering. Yet, amid this stillness, the world beyond the cottage pulses with its own life. Fields lie quiet beneath the moonlight, animals rest in their stalls, and the village sleeps, unaware of the vigil held in this small room. The contrast between the quiet urgency inside and the peaceful slumber outside underscores the fragile nature of existence in this time. The midwife's vigil is an intimate reflection of the rhythms of their lives, the constant struggle between care and calamity, endurance and vulnerability. She embodies the subtle resilience of a world where healing was as much about presence and hope as it was about remedies and rituals. Imagine now the slow passage of hours as dawn approaches, the candle's flame reduced to a soft glow, the child's breathing steadying, or perhaps still frail but no longer faltering. The vigil may extend further, or it may give way to the tentative light of morning, carrying with it the fragile promise of a new day. So, picture yourself once again in that humble cottage, enveloped by the scent of herbs and the quiet assurance of watchful care. The midwife who sat vigil beside a wheezing child holds within her hands not only the breath of a life but the quiet endurance of an age where hope was found in the gentlest acts, beneath the longest nights. The baker who applied poultices of mustard and vinegar. Imagine yourself in a modest kitchen where the first light of dawn filters softly through a small window, casting a warm glow over flour-dusted surfaces and the rough-hewn wooden table. The air carries two distinct scents: the earthy aroma of bread left untended overnight, and the sharp, tangy bite of mustard and vinegar, an odor that fills the room with a pungent intensity. Here lies the baker, once strong and steady-handed, now resting with a cloth pressed against his chest. This cloth, soaked in a mixture of mustard seeds and vinegar, is carefully applied as a poultice, a remedy rooted in tradition and hope. The healer or family member moves gently, pressing the damp fabric in place, believing that the sharpness will draw out pain and illness, like a magnet pulling impurities from the body. The ritual unfolds quietly, the only sounds the faint creak of wooden beams and the distant stirrings of the village waking. The pungent scent clings to the air, mingling with the faint sweetness of dough that awaits its turn in the oven. Time stretches slowly, measured in breaths and heartbeats, as the poultice works, or so it is hoped. As dawn approaches, the room remains still, the baker's chest rising and falling with steady but weary breaths. The pain that prompted this treatment lingers, unchanged, yet the weight of exhaustion settles heavier with each passing moment. The hope for relief contrasts starkly with the unyielding reality of illness. Daily life around such remedies was marked by these moments of quiet care and lingering uncertainty. The baker's routine, once filled with the rhythmic kneading of dough and the warm hum of the oven, now pauses, suspended between effort and waiting. The kitchen, usually a place of creation and sustenance, becomes a space of vigil, where family members watch over one who is both vulnerable and familiar. The biography of this healing attempt reveals the blending of practical knowledge and traditional belief. Mustard and vinegar, known for their stimulating properties, were thought to increase circulation and ease discomfort. Yet, like many such treatments, their effects were often limited, offering comfort more in the act of care than in cure. Archaeological records and historical texts hint at these common remedies. Recipes for poultices and salves appear alongside inventories of household goods, reflecting a world where healing was intimately tied to the materials at hand: foodstuffs, herbs, and simple concoctions. These treatments, passed down through generations, spoke to a desire to act in the face of suffering, however modest the results. Cultural memories preserve this practice with a mix of respect and realism. Tales recall the pungent smells that filled kitchens and the quiet determination of those who applied these poultices, even as outcomes remained uncertain. They evoke a time when care was a hands-on ritual, and hope was found in the simple gestures of tending and touch. Within the family, the experience was deeply felt. Watching a loved one endure pain, applying poultices night after night, brought a mixture of anxiety and tenderness. The scent of mustard and vinegar became a symbol of struggle and devotion, a reminder of the limits of human agency against illness. Imagine once again the kitchen at dawn, the baker resting quietly, the pungent cloth still warm against his skin, and the faint aroma of bread lingering like a promise yet to be fulfilled. This humble scene reveals a world where healing was as much about presence and perseverance as it was about remedy, a delicate balance between hope, effort, and the quiet endurance of those who care. The monk who offered only warmth and simple broth, Imagine yourself stepping quietly into a small, dimly lit monastery cell, where the thick stone walls hold the coolness of countless seasons and the faint scent of beeswax lingers in the air. The room is sparse: a rough wooden table, a simple cot draped with coarse linens, and a narrow window letting in a pale stream of morning light that dances softly upon worn flagstones. The rhythm of monastic life moves slowly here, measured by the distant tolling of bells and the whispered prayers of those who dwell within. In this humble chamber lies a traveler, weakened by illness and wearied by long journeys. His breath comes in shallow waves, his skin is pale, flushed here and there with the heat of fever. The world beyond these walls feels distant, softened into a quiet haze by pain and fatigue. The traveler's eyes close, resting beneath heavy lids, searching for relief in a time when cures were few and frail. Into this stillness steps a monk, his robes modest, his demeanor calm yet purposeful. In his hands, he carries a simple wooden bowl filled with clear broth, its surface rippling gently with faint steam. There are no elaborate potions, no bleeding instruments or complex remedies, only the warmth of this humble liquid and the quiet presence of a compassionate soul. The broth itself is a modest concoction, water simmered slowly with a few roots or grains, stripped of all excess, offering sustenance rather than cure. Its aroma is subtle, earthy, and soothing, promising a gentle comfort that speaks to the body's basic needs. The monk kneels beside the traveler, steadying the bowl, guiding weak hands to sip slowly, carefully. Each swallow is a small act of grace in the face of uncertainty. This simplicity embodies both mercy and acknowledgement, the mercy of care given without pretense, and the acknowledgement of the limits of healing in a world still wrestling with disease and suffering. Medieval medicine often walked a line between empirical knowledge and spiritual hope, and monasteries were centers where these worlds met. Here, healing was not just a matter of physical treatment but of presence, prayer, and the offering of human kindness. Imagine the quiet sounds that fill the room, the soft clink of the bowl, the rhythmic breathing of the sick man, the distant murmur of monks in their prayers. The air carries a faint chill, softened by the warmth of the broth and the quiet attentiveness of the caregiver. This scene is less about dramatic recovery and more about the profound dignity found in simple acts, an embrace of fragility and resilience side by side. Throughout history, monasteries have served as refuges for the sick and weary, their walls sheltering those whose ailments outpaced the reach of medicine. The monk's gift of broth was a gesture laden with meaning, an offering of life-sustaining warmth when more potent remedies were unavailable or unknown. It was a reminder that healing sometimes lies in the quiet company of another, in shared silence and steady hands. As you picture this scene, the flickering candlelight casting soft shadows on the stone, consider the timelessness of such moments. The warmth of a bowl, the presence of care, and the enduring human hope that breathes quietly even in the face of illness. This is a story of compassion's gentle power, a balm for the spirit as much as for the body. And so, in that monastery cell, amidst the hush of stone and flame, a monk offers what he can: warmth, simplicity, and the silent promise of not being alone. The wife who wrapped her husband in layers of cloth. Imagine yourself entering a dim, quiet room in a modest medieval home. The faint scent of damp linen and smoke hangs in the air, softened by the muted light filtering through narrow windows draped with heavy fabric. In the center, a bed is draped in layers of thick blankets, each folded carefully and placed one over another, enveloping a man lying beneath them. His face, pale and damp with sweat, peeks out briefly before being gently covered again. Beside him, a woman moves quietly, her hands steady but filled with a silent urgency born from care and hope. She believes deeply in an ancient remedy, that the body's own heat and sweat can purge the illness that grips him. So, she wraps him tightly, layer upon layer, bundling the body as if to chase away the sickness through warmth. The thick weight of the blankets presses softly but firmly, creating a cocoon of heat in the stillness of the chamber. Outside, faint sounds drift in, the distant clatter of tools, the low murmur of voices, but inside, time slows to the rhythm of patient waiting. The only interruption is the soft, steady drip of water falling from a cracked earthenware ewer nearby. Each drop echoes faintly, marking the passage of hours in this suspended moment. The dripping water becomes a quiet metronome, guiding the slow turning of the night as the woman watches over her husband's fragile sleep. This practice of inducing sweat was rooted in medieval healing traditions, where purging the body of bad humors was thought essential for recovery. Wrapping a patient in layers to bring on sweat was one among many treatments passed down through generations, part medicine, part ritual. Imagine the textures surrounding you, the coarse weave of the blankets, the roughness of the wooden floor beneath worn slippers, the coolness of the stone walls softened by age. The room carries the subtle fragrance of herbs once laid nearby, perhaps lavender or rosemary, intended to comfort the senses. The woman's presence is steady, a quiet guardian in the half-light. She adjusts a fold here, smooths a wrinkle there, her every movement measured and full of tender resolve. Her belief in the healing power of warmth is both a comfort and a small defiance against the uncertainty of illness. Outside the room, the village carries on with its daily rhythms, the rhythmic pounding of a blacksmith's hammer, the soft chatter of market vendors packing away their goods. Yet, within this quiet space, the world narrows to breath and sweat, hope and patience. The man sleeps uneasily beneath the heavy blankets, caught between rest and discomfort. The heat gathers, wrapping around him like a slow tide, drawing out the fever that burns beneath his skin. In this cocoon, life and illness dance closely, their balance delicate and uncertain. Imagine yourself in this room, feeling the warmth and weight, hearing the waters drip and the faint breaths of the sleeper. The hours stretch gently, marked not by urgency but by a steady, unspoken vigil. This scene is a window into medieval life and its intimate struggles with health and healing. It reveals how care was expressed through simple acts, through touch, warmth, and watchfulness. It shows a world where science and superstition intertwined, where love and fear shaped every remedy. As the night deepens, the woman remains by his side, a silent witness to the slow passage of time. The steady drip continues, the blankets grow heavier with night's chill, and the fragile thread of life weaves quietly on. The patient who trusted a talisman hung at the bedpost. Imagine yourself in a modest chamber dimly lit by the flickering glow of a single candle, its flame casting soft, wavering shadows that dance gently against the rough plaster walls. The air is cool and carries a faint scent of dried herbs, lavender, rosemary, and perhaps a trace of frankincense, lingering from offerings made in quiet hope. Against the headboard of a simple wooden bed, a small carved amulet hangs suspended from a worn leather thong, its surface smoothed and gleaming from years of gentle touch. This talisman, modest in size yet heavy with meaning, has been a silent guardian to the patient who lies beneath the thin blanket. Each night, as darkness falls and silence deepens, the patient reaches out with a trembling hand to brush the amulet's worn surface, fingers tracing its familiar curves. A quiet plea escapes in a whispered breath, a prayer carried not just in words but in the steady faith that this small object holds some power over the shadows that gather at the edges of the room. The amulet never moves, never shifts from its place by the bedpost, yet its presence fills the space with a certain calm. Imagine the patient's heart, racing with illness and fear, finding a fragile anchor in this carved token. It offers a sense of protection, a barrier unseen but deeply felt, holding at bay the creeping darkness that threatens peace and rest. In a world where the mysteries of sickness often outpaced understanding, such talismans carried a profound significance. They were woven into the fabric of daily life, part of a subtle tapestry of belief and ritual that sought to bridge the seen and unseen. Carved from wood or bone, inscribed with symbols or blessed by a holy figure, these objects were more than ornaments. They were vessels of hope and defense. Imagine the texture of the amulet under the patient's fingertips, the smoothness earned through countless nights of gentle touch, the coolness of polished wood warmed only by skin. Each night, the act of reaching out, of feeling its reassuring shape, becomes a ritual of both faith and endurance. Outside the chamber, the world continues its steady course. The quiet murmur of villagers preparing for the day, the soft rustle of leaves stirred by morning breeze, and the distant crow of a rooster all hint at the life waiting beyond these walls. Yet inside, Time seems to stretch, marked by the patient's whispered prayers and the steady presence of the talisman. This small object, humble though it is, reflects a larger truth of human experience: how in moments of vulnerability, people seek not only physical remedies but spiritual comfort. The talisman embodies the delicate intersection of hope, belief, and the search for peace amidst uncertainty. Imagine now the patient closing weary eyes, the amulet's presence a quiet sentinel in the dim room. The darkness may gather, but within this small circle of faith, there is a flicker of light, a subtle assurance that they are not alone, that some unseen force watches silently beside them. So, picture yourself once more in that modest chamber, feeling the weight of quiet faith held in a small carved amulet, the gentle ritual of touch and prayer weaving a fragile shield against the night. The patient who trusted a talisman hung at the bedpost reveals a story of endurance, belief, and the tender human longing for protection in the face of the unknown. The elder who refused all remedies, trusting in fate. Imagine yourself in a quiet, shadowed corner of a humble home where the air is thick with the gentle scent of wood smoke curling from a nearby hearth. The room is small, its worn wooden beams softened by years of smoke and memory. Here rests an elder, seated or lying calmly, whose presence fills the space with a profound stillness that both comforts and unsettles those gathered around. This elder, seasoned by the passing of many seasons, has refused all remedies offered. No herbs brewed in steaming pots, no bleeding to draw out imagined toxins, no prayers murmured with hopeful fervor. Instead, she closes her eyes softly, a serene expression settling over her weathered face. Her words drift quietly through the room as she speaks calmly of the cycles of life and death, of the winds and rains she has witnessed, and the time that carries all things forward. To those who watch, this stillness holds a curious power. It is unsettling because it defies the urgent human impulse to act, to heal, to fight against decline. Yet it is serene because it embodies acceptance, an understanding woven from decades of living with nature's rhythms, the wisdom that some paths are beyond human hands to change. Daily life around this quiet surrender unfolds with a gentle rhythm. Family members move softly, respecting her choice, their own actions shaped by a mixture of reverence and helplessness. The scent of wood smoke mingles with the faint aroma of worn fabric and lingering memories. Conversations hush into whispers, eyes meet in silent acknowledgement of the moment's gravity. The biography of such an elder often reflects a life deeply rooted in tradition and resilience. Having faced many hardships, joys, and losses, her trust in fate is not born of resignation but of experience. A lifetime watching the seasons turn and understanding the impermanence of all things. Her refusal of remedies becomes a statement, a final gesture of harmony with the world's natural order. Archaeological and historical records reveal that in many cultures, elders held a revered place, not only for their knowledge but for their acceptance of life cycles. Their deaths were sometimes marked not by frantic attempts to delay but by rituals honoring the passage itself. These customs highlight a worldview where fate and nature's course were embraced rather than resisted. Cultural stories and poems often capture this acceptance. They speak of elders as pillars of wisdom who, in their final days, become guides in the transition between worlds. Their stillness is portrayed as a sacred pause, a moment of deep peace amid the flux of life and death. Within the family and community, responses to such refusal varied. Some found solace in the elder's calm certainty, others wrestled with grief and the desire to intervene. Yet all shared a profound respect for her autonomy and the quiet dignity of her choice. Imagine once more that wood smoke-laden room, the elder resting peacefully as dawn's first light touches the worn beams. Her eyes remain closed, her breath steady, and the stillness around her speaks of a profound trust in the turning of seasons, in the rhythm of life and death, and in the fate that carries all away in its steady, gentle flow. In this quiet moment, the elder's refusal of remedies reveals a timeless story, one of surrender and strength, of acceptance and the serene courage to face what cannot be changed. The pilgrim who journeyed in search of healing springs. Imagine a road winding gently through fields dressed in the muted golds and deep russets of autumn. The air carries the crisp scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. Along this path, a lone pilgrim moves steadily forward, wrapped in a threadbare cloak that has seen many miles and many seasons. Each step is quiet but purposeful, guided by a conviction born not only of hope but of necessity. This pilgrim believes that certain waters, hidden springs known only to a few, hold miraculous healing power. Imagine the pilgrim's eyes scanning the landscape, searching for signs. The shimmer of clear water, the whisper of ancient trees, the subtle presence of a place set apart from the ordinary world. With every footfall on the worn earth, there is the silent prayer that relief waits just beyond the next rise. For centuries, healing springs have drawn travelers like this pilgrim, offering the promise of cure and comfort to those burdened by illness or pain. These waters were not merely physical resources but sacred places, sources of renewal where the boundary between body and spirit might soften. Imagine the delicate spray of a spring, the coolness on the skin, the faint mineral scent carried on the breeze. Pilgrimages to such springs were journeys both outward and inward, shaped by belief as much as by geography. Imagine the pilgrim's solitary walk becoming a ritual of endurance and faith, a moving meditation on hope and human frailty. The road may be rough, the weather uncertain, but the promise of healing pulls the traveler forward. Along the way, pilgrims often joined others who shared their longing. Imagine small groups gathering around fires at dusk, sharing stories of suffering and survival, of cures found and hopes renewed. These moments of connection brought warmth not only to bodies chilled by travel but to hearts weighed by uncertainty. Historical records show that many springs gained reputations that crossed borders and centuries. Some were famed for curing skin diseases, others for easing pain or restoring strength. Imagine the humble spring in a hidden valley, quietly offering its waters to countless weary souls, its power carried in whispered tales and written prayers. Yet, the journey to these springs was never guaranteed to bring relief. Illness often lingered, stubborn and relentless. Imagine the pilgrim drinking from the cool water, the quiet hope mingling with a sober understanding of limits. The act was as much about faith as medicine, a blending of spiritual yearning with physical care. The pilgrim's journey, then, was a testament to resilience, the enduring human desire to seek healing and renewal, to move forward even when the road is long and uncertain. Imagine the worn cloak, the steady footsteps, and the unwavering belief that beyond each horizon lies possibility. As you reflect on this, picture again the winding road through autumn fields, the rustle of leaves beneath tired feet, and the shimmering promise of a healing spring hidden in the folds of the landscape. The story of the pilgrim reminds us of the timeless intersection of hope, nature, and the quest for well-being. The youth who endured cupping beside the hearth. Imagine yourself inside a modest medieval home, nestled deep in the countryside where the rhythm of life is dictated by the rise and fall of the sun. The air inside the cottage is thick with the warmth of a crackling hearth, the scent of burning wood mingling with the faint fragrance of dried herbs hanging from the ceiling beams. Shadows flicker softly across rough timber walls, lending the small room a gentle, golden glow. In the center of this intimate space lies a young boy, pale and fragile, his breath uneven and shallow. The firelight caresses his face, revealing a fevered flush on his cheeks. Around him, the household is quiet but tense, a collective hush hanging in the air as the family watches, torn between hope and despair. They know well the precariousness of such moments, how illness can grip a life and how fragile the thread between recovery and loss truly is. Before the boy, a local healer or family elder prepares for a treatment both ancient and mysterious to modern ears: cupping therapy. Nearby, a small kettle bubbles gently on the fire, the faint hiss of boiling water mixing with the crackle of flames. Glass cups are warmed carefully in the embers, glowing faintly red-hot as they absorb the heat. The ritual is slow and deliberate, each movement steeped in intention, born from centuries of tradition and belief. As the cups are lifted from the fire, the practitioner moves swiftly yet gently, pressing each glowing rim to the boy's bare back. The sudden suction pulls the skin upward, and the boy's muscles tense in response. Bruised circles begin to form immediately, deep red and purple blotches that mark the places where the body is thought to be coaxed into releasing its ailments. The warmth from the fire and the suction combine, drawing out the illness, or so the medieval theory suggests. Rooted in the humoral understanding of health, this practice aimed to balance bodily fluids, drawing harmful excesses to the surface. The marks left behind were seen as proof of the body's response, a visible sign that the remedy was at work. Yet, as the fire crackles and the cups cling firmly, the household's emotions are complicated. The marks on the boy's back are unmistakable evidence of treatment, but they also signal pain and discomfort. Each bruise is a silent question. Will this remedy ease his suffering or merely mark him further? The tension in the room is almost palpable, a fragile mix of hopeful anticipation and quiet dread. In the flickering candlelight, the family's whispered prayers intertwine with the rhythmic sound of the fire, creating a solemn soundtrack to the boy's ordeal. The room's textures, the roughness of wooden beams, the softness of woven blankets, the smooth, cool glass of the cups, form a backdrop for this intimate moment of care and struggle. Historically, cupping was widespread across medieval Europe and beyond, a testament to the human desire to intervene in illness with whatever means were available. Though modern medicine no longer views cupping as a cure, its use reveals much about how societies understood health and the body's mysteries. The practice was as much about ritual, hope, and the comfort of action as it was about physical effect. As you imagine this scene, the boy's quiet endurance, the steady hands of the healer, the firelight dancing softly, the deeper rhythms of medieval life come into focus. Illness was an ever-present threat. Treatments were attempts to wrest control from uncertainty. Families relied on tradition and care, weaving together the physical and spiritual in their pursuit of healing. The youth's patience beside the hearth, marked by these bruises, speaks to a broader human story. It is one of resilience in the face of vulnerability, of quiet strength amid discomfort, and of the enduring hope that even the simplest acts can carry profound meaning. And so, beneath the soft glow of the fire and the watchful eyes of his family, the boy endures, his body bearing the marks of care, his spirit held in the gentle, unspoken support of those around him. The night when no remedy could be found at all. Imagine yourself stepping softly into a small, humble cottage nestled at the edge of a quiet village. The night air outside is cool and still, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. Inside, the shadows stretch long and deep, folding the room into a silent embrace. The hearth, once alive with flickering flames and warmth, now holds only cold ashes, their gray dust settled in quiet resignation. Shelves line the walls, but their usual bounty is absent. No bundles of dried herbs hang from wooden pegs, no small jars filled with remedies or tinctures catch the faint light. The familiar tools of healing lie untouched, missing, as if the very essence of care has fled the room. In the center of this dim space, a family sits together, clustered close in muted grief and quiet despair. Their faces are etched with weariness, illuminated only by the faint glow of a single candle, its flame flickering against the dark. They listen, the only sound between them the slow, uneven breathing of their loved one, a fragile thread of life hanging in the balance. This night feels suspended beyond time, as though the world outside has softened its edges, waiting with bated breath. There is no healer summoned, no whispered prayers carried by the wind. The herbs that once promised hope are gone, and with them, the small comforts that might have eased the suffering. Imagine the weight of that silence, the absence of action, of remedy, of possibility. It presses gently but relentlessly, settling like a soft fog over the room and the hearts within it. The family shares the quiet vigil, their presence a testament to love and endurance amid helplessness. Outside, the village carries on in muted rhythms, the faint rustle of leaves, the occasional distant bark of a dog, the slow passage of stars tracing arcs across the sky. But here, in this cottage, time seems to fold inward, focused solely on the fragile breath and the unspoken hope that still lingers. This scene reflects a harsh reality of medieval life. Resources were often scarce, healers distant or overwhelmed, and remedies not always at hand. Illness could sweep through families with a cruel suddenness, and there were nights when no cure could be found, only the patient's quiet struggle against the inevitable. The air in the cottage carries subtle scents, aged wood, a hint of extinguished candle smoke, and the faint trace of herbs once present but now vanished. The room feels cool, though the warmth of shared presence offers some comfort against the chill. Imagine sitting quietly with the family, sharing their watchfulness, feeling the slow passage of moments marked only by breath and heartbeat. There is a solemn beauty here, an unspoken bond that holds through darkness and uncertainty. The absence of remedy does not erase care. Instead, it reveals its deeper forms: the presence, the patience, the enduring vigil that love sustains when all else fails. The family's quiet strength is a reminder that history is not only shaped by triumphs but also by the profound resilience found in moments of waiting and loss. As the night deepens, the candle flickers low, shadows lengthen, and the world outside seems to hold its breath with those within. In this stillness, we glimpse the fragile balance of life, the limits of human effort, and the quiet dignity of those who face the unknown together.